Strength training will not make you look bulky as a woman. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Nate from Nate Fitness, and welcome back to the channel. So today, guys, we have a new video for the Gym Myth Monday series, and the myth that we're going to be discussing is that lifting as a woman, or more specifically weightlifting as a woman, will make you look bulky. But guys, before we get into the myth, I just want to give a huge thank you and a huge shout out to the women that I asked for help for this video. I asked a bunch of questions and they answered with amazing answers. It gave me really deep insight into not just the myth, but actually the negative connotations surrounding the word bulky and surrounding the myth as well. So yeah, guys, huge shout out to you guys. If you're watching this, thank you very much for us answering those questions. And yeah, I hope that we can, work together for videos later on as well. But anyway, without further ado, guys, let's get straight into this myth. Okay, guys, so let's first off talk about what the myth itself actually is. And so to start this off, we're going to talk about what the myth is and what it entails. Basically, the myth is that lifting weights, or other weightlifting, strength training, as a female or a girl or a woman, whatever you want to say, will make you look manly or make you look bulky, right? And that's the key word for this video, is actually going to be bulky, okay? This myth has been around for a long time and has been regurgitated by both men and women alike. And the meat of bones is basically if you are, well, what it implies is if you are a woman and you want to start training strength, lifting weights, you are going to look bulky because you are going to gain muscle, right? And the excess muscle will make you look big and bulky and whatever else, right? And there's a lot of words that get thrown around that you will look like, right? So they might say that you're going to look big or bulky or muscly or manly or unattractive or strong or whatever it might be. Words that aren't stereotypically feminine, right? But we're going to look at the myth itself and find out how true is it that if you lift weights as a woman or as a female or as a girl, you will get bulky. How true is that myth? And so, with debunking any myth, we first have to go into what the word bulky actually means. Because the myth is that if you lift weights as a woman or a girl or a female, you will become bulky. But what does it mean to actually be bulky, right? And so, firstly, by Googling the word bulky, you'll find an Oxford Dictionary definition that to be bulky is to be taking up too much space, large, and unwieldy, right? And that's an adjective. So what does this actually mean, and why is this associated with females who weightlift, or rather females who strength train? Because the context that the word is used, or rather the word itself, is very subjective. Because what I consider to be large and unwieldy, or rather taking up too much space, might actually be different for somebody else. They might see what I'm seeing and say, no, that's not large, that's not unwieldy, that's not bulky or taking up too much space, right? And so the word is very subjective. And so what one woman thinks looks bulky, another woman might say, no, that just looks powerful or strong or, really defined. And so it's really hard to really get an actual definition, or rather put it all together into one kind of word. So there's a lot of meanings behind it, right? I do, however, have a theory as to why the word bulky is often used in this context, or rather this myth, and I think that the word bulky has become synonymous with the word muscular, and the word muscular synonymous with the word masculine or manly, right? And so if you're a female and you hear the word bulky and you think, oh, that's muscles, that's a manly trait, of course you're going to associate it that way. And most women don't really want to look manly, or most people who identify as women don't want to look manly. And if you do, that's fine. But what I'm trying to say is that the reason why this is often seen as an unattractive trait in females to look bulky is that they associate the word bulky with being strong and masculine and large and unwieldy, right? That's just my theory. That's not to say that that's actually the reason. However, when trying to find a root or a stem of where this myth came from, a lot of it comes from, in my mind and from what I've read and what I've researched, comes from the idea that, men are large and bulky and, they take up a lot of space and this and that, whereas females, or women rather, are, smaller and, more feminine, more petite, and kind of, that's generally the accepted beauty standard of women around the world. And so this begs the question, what body type, or rather what classifies as bulky? Because judging by the definition of the word, bulky means large or taking up too much space or unwieldy, right? And therefore, it could mean multiple different things in multiple different body types. And that's going to create a really strange contrast between body types, because if you're large in terms of being obese or large in terms of having too much adipose tissue, right, you're going to be considered bulky. But then if you actually go to the gym and do strength training and you lose all of that adipose tissue, lose all that fat, all that weight, and you look slimmer but you look more muscular, even though you take up less space, you are also still considered bulky. And so here's where it is kind of a weird blurred line, because how is it that if you're obese or large, in terms of being overweight, you're not considered bulky, but if you're muscular and fit, you're considered bulky? One's obviously more healthy than the other. Not to say that if you are overweight, you are inherently unhealthy. That's not the truth. But what I'm trying to say here is, it's kind of a myth where it wants to have its cake and eat it too. It wants to take this one group of women, this hyper exaggerated group of women, and put them into the category of bulky when they don't necessarily actually fit that definition of that word, right? But even if you say, well, Nate, the word itself doesn't really matter that much because I don't want to look big, I don't want to look muscular and manly, I don't want to have a lot of muscles, okay? So even if you think that the word doesn't necessarily matter, rather it's the meaning behind it in terms of, how women want to look and how women want to be perceived, I understand that too. But also we need to actually look at how women gain muscle and how women, how their bodies change as a result of strength training to actually determine, or rather discern, whether or not lifting weights will make them look bulky or manly. And so let's first talk about how muscle is made in the body, or rather how muscle is synthesized. Now, I have a video about this in the same Gym Myth Monday series. It's my video about protein and the myth that you can only absorb X amount of protein per hour. If you want a more in-depth guide, or rather more in-depth look into how muscle protein synthesis works, or how muscle protein breakdown works, feel free to go check that video out. I will not link it in the description because it will be in the playlist alongside this video. But I'll give you a quick little, insight as to how it works in this video, just because it's kind of important to what I'm going to be talking about. So firstly, you're going to be eating protein-rich foods that are going to travel down into your stomach, be turned into chyme, and then move to the small intestines, where it's going to mix with some other enzymes from the liver to kind of break down and become amino acids and dipeptides, which is then used for muscle protein synthesis to create muscle. Now, there is also something called muscle protein breakdown, and the rate in which the muscle protein synthesis occurs has to outweigh, or rather be higher than the rate in which muscle protein breakdown occurs in order for muscle to be synthesized. And conversely, as you gain more muscle, you are going to need to eat more protein and more food in order to gain more muscle and retain that same muscle. So in order to gain a lot of muscle, or rather a significant amount, that in which a bodybuilder per se might have, you need to continuously be on a very heavy diet and training very, very intensely, right? But first and foremost, you really do have to be on your diet. You have to be eating enough protein, mainly a protein diet, in order to be gaining large amounts of muscle. That being said, the food aspect is only one aspect of gaining muscle, and there's also a hormonal aspect. More specifically, the anabolic hormones. Now, there are anabolic hormones and there are catabolic hormones, as well as human growth hormones, or HGH. I'm not going to be talking too much about the catabolic hormones, as they aren't really that pertinent to what I'm going to be talking about. They're not too important for this video. They do play a big role and they are important. They're mainly used to, produce and release energy. However, testosterone is the hormone that is more commonly used, or rather more commonly accepted to be the muscle-growing, bone-growing kind of hormone in the body. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And just to be clear, I'm not going to be going into this whole myth or this fallacy that because men have more testosterone, they grow more muscle, or rather they are better at growing muscle, because that is actually untrue as well, and that could be a myth for another video that I could go into. We could go into the IGF-1 kind of hormonal side of things, but I'm not going to be doing that. So we're just going to be talking about the anabolic side of things, and more specifically testosterone and human growth hormone. And guys, as with all videos on my channel, it's worth stating that I am not a doctor, I am not a personal trainer, and I'm not a nutritionist. This is the information that I have gained myself over my year of training heavily this year, and a little bit prior to that as well when I was doing my body recomp. So please, 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 if you need further advice, go speak to a professional, ask them the questions that you're going to have, because I am not qualified to be giving health advice. This is only for entertainment, and this is only to serve as a rough insight into how these things work. When it comes to your health, do not mess around, do not ask on the internet, go to a health professional and seek their advice. That is very important, guys. So guys, let's get into talking about the anabolic hormones, and more specifically, testosterone, or commonly referred to as the male sex hormone. Now, this is a hormone that is more commonly seen in men, as it is the male sex hormone, the hormone that is responsible for growth in males during puberty. All right, it's produced in the testes or testicles for males in pretty large doses. Like I say, is the main sex hormone for men, and it is produced in the ovaries for women, though in much smaller quantities than in men. Now, like I stated, testosterone is mainly abundant in men. However, it is also a very important hormone in women. However, it is just prevalent. It is just in a smaller dose in women. Women do not produce as much testosterone as men, and as a result of this, during puberty, men, while taking longer to grow on average, will on average be taller, have larger bones, and have more muscle. Right? On average, an untrained male will be larger and more muscular than an untrained female. That's just how puberty works. That's just how testosterone works. And while this may give men a head start in terms of how much muscle they have, and perhaps the extent in which their muscles can grow, this does not mean that they will grow more muscles, or rather are more attuned to growing muscles than females. Having extra testosterone in men, obviously, having higher levels of test will be more beneficial for growing muscle. However, that does not mean that if you are a female and you do not have the same test as a male, which you will not have in most cases, that does not mean that you will not be able to grow as much muscle as a male. And there is a reason for this that we are going to be getting into very soon. As mentioned earlier, there is also a hormone called human growth hormone. Now, while both men and women have human growth hormones, and it's commonly accepted that during the cycles of REM sleep, that's when your human growth hormone is produced by the body. While both men and women have human growth hormone, studies have kind of concluded, and there are studies that contradict this, but for the sake of this video, I will be using these studies. Studies have concluded that in women, human growth hormone takes over the anabolic role and anabolic response of testosterone in men. So where men have the anabolic testosterone to increase their muscle growth, in women, human growth takes on that role, as they do not have as much testosterone to grow muscles as men. And as a result of this, women actually have the same ability to synthesize as much muscle as men through hypertrophy, as men. So women are not at a disadvantage as via lack of testosterone. They have just as much chance and just as much ability to grow muscle as men. In fact, some studies have stated that women actually grow muscle at a faster rate than men, and the muscle is actually potentially more dense. Begs the question then, why can't women, or rather why don't women become as bulky or as big as men, right? And while it's unlikely that the average female will also, or rather the average female weightlifter will be smaller than the average male weightlifter of the same training regimen, why is one going to be bulkier than the other? Why is one going to still look feminine and the other one look masculine? And that's going to come down to, like I said earlier, bones, the way in which bones are structured and the way in which muscle inserts are going to be working. Also, it's going to have a lot to do with how body fat works in the two genders, but I'm not going to get too much into body fat in this video, as that's a topic for another video. And while it is important for this video in some ways, I'm not going to be getting too in-depth on it, because, body fat is sometimes, a little bit of a triggering thing for some people, and so I'm not going to get into it too much in this video. Now, as a result of puberty, men who are on average taller, on average have more muscle, and on average their bones are longer, are going to have longer muscle inserts. Now, a muscle insert is where the muscle starts and ends on attaching to a bone. And so, for example, on my forearm, you'll have your muscle inserts on your forearm, on your biceps, etc. And on average, they are going to be larger and they're going to be longer on men than they are on women, because the bones themselves are larger. Therefore, the insert is going to be different. The muscle is going to appear larger and be stronger, right? Untrained, that is. So for women who have smaller bones and a smaller stature, their inserts are going to be smaller. Therefore, their muscles are going to be smaller and not necessarily as strong as what a male's is. However, like I said earlier, that does not mean that they don't have the same aptitude to be able to grow muscle as what men do. Matter of fact, potentially they could grow muscle faster and easier, especially in some certain areas of the body in which women seem to excel in growing muscle. But it is because of this reason that men who are in bodybuilding, even though women who are also in bodybuilding, a female bodybuilder is not going to look as big and as strong and as masculine as what a male bodybuilder is because it is just not possible for a female bodybuilder who has had the same training, the same eating, the same schedule, everything is the same, to be as big as a male of that same caliber. It is just very unlikely. It's not to say that there aren't outlying exceptions. There definitely are. There's always outlying exceptions for every rule. Some people are just built different, quite literally. But also we have to look down into muscle density and how muscle density plays a role in how we look bulky versus how we look skinny or fit or whatever else. Muscle density is going to play a very huge part in why you can actually... muscle density is going to have a very big role in how we perceive people as bulky versus fat, bulky versus skinny, etc. So we are now going to be talking about muscle density. So now we're going to be talking about muscle density. More specifically, there is a kind of weird thing going around where people think that muscle weighs more than fat, which is just simply untrue. If you have 1 kilo of muscle and 1 kilo of fat, they weigh the same. They are both 1 kilo. It's the same as if you had 1 kilo of feathers versus 1 kilo of brick. They're going to weigh the same. But actually there is a difference, and it's called the density, or rather the density of the mass. If you have 1 kilo of brick and 1 kilo of feathers, there is probably going to be 1 brick that weighs 1 kilo, whereas to make up the 1 kilo in feathers, you need multiple bags of feathers because the weight in the feather is less dense. And so there are more feathers than there is 1 brick. The 1 brick takes up less space, the feathers take up more space, and it is the same with muscle versus fat, which is why someone who, for example, is 5 foot, 50 kilos, and at 40% body fat is going to look significantly larger than someone who's at 5 foot, 50 kilos, and 20% or 25% body fat. This person over here, the person who is 5 foot, 50 kilos, but works out a lot and is at 25% body fat, is going to look significantly smaller. They are going to look more muscular as a result of having less body fat and having more muscle definition. But by nature, they are going to be smaller and less bulky and less unsightly, or rather not unsightly, but unwieldy, sorry about that, than what the person who is 50 kilos and 5 foot but obese looks like, right? And so that's going to bring into our next question then. Can women who train strength training look bulky, or rather be bulky? And the short answer to that is no. Strength training will not make you look bulky as a woman. While it's true that strength training is going to train your muscles, and muscles can be larger and stronger and, more pronounced, you'll have more definition, you'll be more lean, it can also make you physically smaller as a result of losing adipose tissue and losing fat. More specifically, if you do something called a body recomp, which is a body recomposition, changing the amount of fat versus the amount of muscle in your body, you are going to look potentially you are going to look smaller as a result of losing fat, gaining muscle, becoming more lean. Lean muscle is going to be a lot smaller than having a lot of fat on your body, because of the reasons we talked about earlier, the muscle density, right? And so the amount of adipose tissue, the more adipose tissue you lose, the smaller you're going to look. The more muscle you gain, the more muscular you're going to look. But also, women naturally carry more fat on them anyway. And so the large kind of bulky striations of the muscles and all that kind of stuff that you see in men and in bodybuilders is not going to be prevalent. You are not going to look like the Hulk or the She-Hulk just because you lifted weights 3 times for 3 days of the week. And that's not to say that you're only going to be doing that. I understand a lot of women work out rigorously. As a matter of fact, I have a lot of friends who work out more than me who are all women, and they are strong. But that's getting off topic anyway. But it's important to also note that weightlifting and bodybuilding, or other strength training and bodybuilding, are two different things. And what a bodybuilder looks like, and the striations of their muscles, the size of their muscles, and stuff like that, is not indicative to what an average weightlifter is going to look like. They are a hyper exaggerated caricature of what lifting weights and having a crazy diet and crazy training is going to do to you. And it takes a long time, male or female, to accumulate that amount of mass naturally and even unnaturally through use of PEDs or PEDs. It's going to take a long time to look that muscular, and a lot of eating and a lot of training. And so you can look bulky through training, or rather bulky through strength training, but the odds of the average weightlifter looking that way, or perhaps the way that you envision that you will look like, is very, very, very slim. Unless, like I stated earlier, you're eating a large amount of food, a large amount of protein, and doing a lot of training, and rather the training that you're doing is very specific to hypertrophy training and gaining muscle over strength, you will not look bulky or large. You will see a better increase in strength. You will see a better increase in health. You will see a better increase in mental health, physical health. You'll see an increase in a lot of different facets in your life, but you will not end up looking bulky like you think you will. And actually, when you look at a lot of social media kind of influencers who are looking this certain way, fit, toned, however it might be, it is actually very uninformed to believe that they look the way they look through diet and through doing a few crunches alone. There's a very high chance that they're actually in the gym every day doing their weightlifting and doing whatever else it is that they're also doing. And so, moral of the story is, there are a lot of reasons as to why, as a woman, if you lift weights, or rather strength train, you will not look bulky. It is very, very, very unlikely. A lot of men train for years and years and years, and even then they don't look bulky, right? So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of training to get super bulky and super masculine and super muscly. It just is not something that happens overnight, or even in the span of 1, 2, 3 years of just regular training. It does not happen. That said, I can't coerce you and I can't make you get in and do strength training. It's not for everybody, but I would definitely recommend strength training because it is awesome. It is probably one of the best things you'll ever do. But as I mentioned in my intro, I actually asked a lot of questions, rather 4 questions, to a bunch of women, because I wanted to get their personal insights and their personal opinions on, this whole myth. The whole myth on, if you're a woman and you weightlift, will you become bulky? I wanted to know how it's affected them, and also their insight and their opinion on the whole matter, right? And so I asked these 4 women 4 different questions. And question 1, do you think, being a woman, you feel pressured by other women to look stereotypically slim or stereotypically feminine? Question 2, where do you think the idea, or rather the myth, of women being bulky as a result of strength training stems from? Question number 3, do you think it's sexist for men to dislike bulky, or rather muscly, women who regularly train strength training? And question number 4, would you say that this myth affects many women and prevents them from getting stronger in fear that they will become bulky or unattractive? And I have to say, as a man, the response to these questions was actually very, very alarming and very sad, and actually made me feel like perhaps the industry being the fitness industry, and just people in general have just really let down women when it comes to this specific sport. It's not a sport that should be male dominated. It's a sport that more women should get into. It's something that's very healthy for everybody. And hearing the responses of these women, which is a broad spectrum. Some are active in the gym, some are active at home, some are they would like to be active, but are perhaps too scared of this myth, but also just in general of going to the gym. And so it's a large spectrum of women that I've asked this question to. But yeah, their alarming answers really, really resonated, and made me feel very, very upset, because whenever I'm in the gym, I'm happy to see women on the strength machines, or lifting free weights, and it's not some silly kind of sexist like she's in there lifting her weights. It's not like that. I just know that some women struggle to get into the strength side of things because they are worried about what people will think. And so whenever I see them, all I can think is like, you go. Like, and it's the same with when I see guys and new guys starting out. All I can think is like, that is so awesome. You are going to be doing awesome. But let's get into the answers that they had for these questions before I close this video out. And so for that first question, what I found is that most women actually did feel that there was a pressure, or rather an expectation put on women to feel or look a certain way. Whether it be in countries where they have a specific beauty standard, for example, you'd have the same thing with skin tone and stuff like that. There is one for weight, and a lot of countries, a lot of Asian countries specifically, there are, a lot of standards on looking slim and looking feminine and looking, young and all this kind of stuff. And so there are pressures put on women to look and feel a certain way. And there are traditional beauty standards that are put on them by not just women, or rather not just men, but women as well, of that kind of society or of that country. And one of the women that I talked to actually said it's actually mostly from older women. And this probably comes from the idea of, these women thinking that, the old society, the old beauty standard is still relevant today. And so they kind of say things like, men won't find you attractive if you look XYZ, or men don't want women who do XYZ, or men don't want women who do yada, yada, yada. These kind of pressures are put on women and told to women and make them self-conscious and self-doubt whether or not doing strength training or doing training in general is what they should be doing. Rather, they should be ensuring they look a certain way to, conform to this societal idea or the societal kind of view on what women should look like. And interestingly, a lot of women think that this kind of outlook and this whole bulky kind of, gym women looking bulky and unfeminine and stuff comes from the clothing industry, and more particularly that it comes from the hyper exaggerated sizing of female clothing and having clothing that does not fit to the strong female body type, or other females who have a lot of muscle in certain places where other females do not have. And I completely agree. I think that the clothing industry for both men and women perpetuates the idea that you have to look a certain way to be able to fit certain clothes. Being a gym goer myself and having longer legs and, to be quite honest, a very fat ass, whenever I go looking for clothes, I'll have to try on clothes that are much, bigger than what I should have to wear, because, if I try on sizes that fit my leg size, my leg length, they're so tight because my ass and thighs are so huge that I can't wear that size, so I have to go for a size up. But then when I size up my pants, obviously it's longer in the legs, and so now I've got to roll them up. And so what I'm trying to say is that the clothing industry kind of facilitates the idea that you have to look this certain way and fit these certain clothes, because we're not going to make clothes for your specific type of body type. We're not going to make clothes for the specific type of woman or the specific type of man. And so I can really see where they're coming from. And when I asked where they think that the myth came from, most women didn't really have an idea or an opinion on that. But one stated that could stem from the age-old belief that men should be strong and muscular and breadwinners, whereas women should be the kind of calming, compassionate, feminine caregivers that are small and maternal. And I think that it's very possible that it could come from somewhere like that. It could stem from that kind of thought. When I asked them, did you think that men having kind of a preference, or rather thinking that women who are more muscular or stronger or whatnot, do you think that's sexist? Most said no. You are allowed to have your kind of preference. You are allowed to have your opinion. However, where that line is drawn is if you start telling women that they should not look a certain way, or they should not do a certain thing because they are women. That would be sexist, and I have to agree. Men need to accept that women are allowed to do whatever it is that they want with their body, and they should feel like they can do whatever they want with their body. And this is going to be another topic for another video I'm going to bring out, which is going to be about men who stare at women while they're in the gym, and why the idea of female only, or other female segregated gyms is potentially a good but also a bad thing. But that's a topic for another video anyway. The general consensus is it is not sexist for men to have preferences in the body type of women that they are looking for. And finally, when I asked the question, do you think that the going to the gym and working muscles will make you look bulky myth keeps a lot of women out, or are there a lot of women self-conscious about strength training? A lot of them said, yeah. when I started out, I didn't want to go to the gym and lift weights or anything like that in fear of becoming too big or too strong, or being told that I would be bigger than most guys and stuff like that. And I think that's very shocking. I really, not that it was surprising, but it really does suck to hear that women are still in 2021 feeling like they can't go and work their muscles or get stronger and have all the positive health benefits associated with working out, which I may do another video about later on down the line, just because they fear that they're not going to look like the societal norm of what a woman should look like, which is just silly, because you should look and feel the way that you want to feel. But guys, I know this is a long video, so let's wrap this up. In conclusion, the myth that strength training as a woman will make you bulky is wrong. You will not become unwieldy or too large or too masculine or whatever else from working your muscles alone. There are a lot of different things that come into play when we talk about growing muscles beyond what the average gym goer or the average lifter is going to grow. It takes a long time, it takes a lot of food, it takes very specific training regimens, and just training in general to reach the point in which you would be considered bulky as a man or a female. There are biological requirements that must be met to completely encompass the growth of muscle in a rate that would make you look bulky from strength training. The average gym goer, male or female, will not hit the necessary biological requirements to reach that level of muscle synthesis and grow to those sizes. Which is why every man who goes to the gym does not look like a bodybuilder. They're not all looking like Ronnie or Arnie, right? It's because there are very specific things that you have to do to become as big as what these people are going to be. And so, going to the gym and lifting is not going to make you look bulky or manly or whatever. You are going to have so many positive benefits. No one is going to think less of you. And if they do, send them this video. But you should feel happy and beautiful and strong within yourself and with your own skin, regardless of how much muscle you have or don't have, regardless of how much adipose tissue you have or don't have, regardless of the negative connotations. Do what's best for you. If you want to get stronger, get stronger. It does not matter if you're a female. It does not matter if you think people will, think of you as some strong, scary woman. It's not like that. Do what is best for you. Do what's going to make you happier and healthier and independent. Being a woman who is, expected to stay home and stuff like that, that is outdated, and, expecting women to look a certain way is dangerous. Look how you want, feel how you want, do what you want, become stronger. Anyway, guys, that's going to be this video done. If you like this video, drop a like. If you lift heavy weights, subscribe, and remember, guys, that was heavy.